Hello everyone, back to tuning into today's second video, doing the extended USA forecast for today's second video. So as always on a Wednesday, we're having a look at the weather for the next 6 weeks. Actually it's 5 weeks, but more about that in a moment. In the United States, I'll get on that for you in a second. Just to say that the first video released today was our 6 a.m. UK weather forecast, and we've also got a little update looking at the spring forecast shortly. So we're going to be evaluating or doing evaluation. Anyway, you know what I mean. We're going to be analysing the spring forecast and seeing how we did. And if all of that was, I'm going to be live streaming at 6 p.m. this evening. So we're going to be live streaming our 10 to 14 dayer, and I shall see you at 6 o'clock for that one, hopefully. Please like, share, subscribe on all today's videos. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. Right, okay, let's start with the situation in America for next week in terms of the 500 millibar height anomaly. So this is going to take us from the 19th to the 26th of June. This is still 6 weeks long here, but because we're like midweek now, they've taken out ECMWF.int. They've taken out this week, if you see what I mean. So it is still a 6 week long here, but we don't start with like this week, we're starting with next week. If you see what I mean. I've made a little bit of a change with that, which really threw me last week, but I've worked out, you know, what's going on. Anyway, 500 millibar height anomaly for the United States for next week, above average heights across northeast America, back into Canada. A bit of a trough in eastern parts of America, and a ridge down across the southern states. The temperature anomaly next week looks like this. So a swathe of cooler than average conditions from the west coast to the east coast through these central portions of America. On either side is warmer average. So you've got a strange anomaly. So northern parts of America, significantly warmer than average up there. Let's put in the temperature scale. Significantly warmer, if not hotter than average across northern parts states and back into Canada. And of course also down in the south, it could be very, very hot down in South Texas, for example. Seeing a temperature anomaly there of 3 to 6 degrees above average. It's already a really hot time of the year, of course, in the southern states, of Texas, for example. So to be 3 to 6 degrees above the average temperature at Texas and in the south, it's going to be very, very hot there next week, to say the least. Of course, bear in mind, like for California, for example, where we see it cooler than average, it's still going to be warm there as well, because these are anomalies to average. So even for temperature anomalies like a degree below average in California, it's California in June, so it's still going to be very warm, if not hot. So as precipitation is concerned, many areas coming out drier than normal, though we have got a wet area here in the east and in the southeast as well, but really from the west coast up towards the northeast and most points in between, again particularly through the Midwest into the Great Lake region, we see significantly drier than conditions coming through them. Week 2 will be the 26th of June to the 3rd of July. So a large area of above average heights is generally taking over across America, actually, in this week. There might be some sort of upper level trough still left in this southeast corner, and we might be bringing some sort of lower pressure onto the west coast of America as well. The temperature anomaly for week 2, 26th of June, 3rd of July, generally warm and average in most areas. It is still a little bit on the cooler side toward the Pacific west coast and in the extreme southeast corner, something like Georgia, a little bit cooler than average. But actually most areas looking above average and particularly warm or hot through the northern states once again. And back into Canada as well, actually. And as far as precipitation is concerned, wetter than average in this southeastern corner and going up the east coast as well. So the eastern seaboard actually looking a little bit wet, and wet just off the west coast. Otherwise, most areas are dry again, particularly from these western states to the Midwest, through the Rockies as well, for example. And much of the south looking reasonably dry once again. Week 3 will be the 3rd to the 10th of July. This week has some above average heights in northern and also west parts of America. Could this area be a trough of low pressure, though, in reality? Let's see what the temperature's doing. Temperature's generally above average, really, in most areas. This southeast corner reverts to no signal. Even the west coast is becoming warmer, which is something we haven't seen for quite some time. So, really, coast-to-coast warmth there as we go into July. It does look as though summer 2023 is going to step up several gears after a little bit of a delayed and slow start to it. It does look as though the summer 2023 in America is really stepping up 2 or 3 gears over the next couple of weeks, I have to say. And week 3 precipitation looks dry out in west. So that's a bit of a change as well on what we've had over recent several months, actually, right way back to last autumn and winter, really. It's been generally very wet, often rain, sometimes snow in most western areas, and tending to be drier in the east. That's a little bit of a flip on what we've seen. Could the long-term, long wave pattern be changing here in the in North America? And if it is, that would have knock-on effects for the Pacific and also the Atlantic and Europe as well, potentially. So if we are seeing a significant long wave pattern change in America, that will have effects elsewhere. So I know a lot of people, in Europe and in the UK don't watch our USA forecast. But to be honest, weather is interconnected. It's very, very interconnected. So if we're picking up signals of a long-term pattern change in America, then Europe should be on the lookout, maybe a couple of weeks afterwards, for some significant changes there too. All speculation, but the weather in the Northern Hemisphere, around the Northern Hemisphere, is interconnected. This is this is going to be week. Well, it's week 4, but week 5, you see what I mean? It's the 10th to the 17th of July. This is another change on what we've had over several months. Again, we see the above average heights here into the west and the northwest of America. So if this area actually becomes like a trough of low pressure, that is a significant change on the long wave pattern right way back to last autumn and winter time. The temperature anomaly, again, coast to coast warmth here, right way from the west coast all the way to the eastern seaboard and all points in between as well. And the precipitation anomaly looks like that, just generally dry than average, but again, particularly through these western states. So this idea, but it's been quite wet through California and along the west coast, from, been hearing me say it, from the west coast to the Rockies, very often over the past few months, it's been cooler and wetter than average. This looks like quite a significant change, I have to say, that's going on in America over the next few weeks. What the impacts of that will be, if any, for the UK and for Northern Europe remains to be seen. But this does look like a rather different pattern that we're seeing here to me. So the final week is going to be the 17th to the 24th of July. And very weak still by this point, but some higher pressure in the far north, otherwise not much to work with there. Temperature anomalies for the final week, week 5 or week 6, whichever you take it as. Again, above average from the west coast to the east coast. And precipitation anomalies look like this finally. So becoming a little bit wetter across the southern, southeastern states, dry in the north and in the northwest, and potentially back toward the Pacific as well. Quite an interesting update, this, I think. Signs of a long wave pattern change here. Where we go with this, I'll wait and see. Will it have any other impacts, elsewhere in the Northern Hemisphere? Again, we'll have to wait and see whether it is interconnected. So if you get a fundamental change in America, you would assume that could promote changes for the Atlantic and for Northern Europe, and, back to Asia as well, if you go in that direction. So if you go in that direction, it could promote changes for the Atlantic, and for Northern Europe, if you go in that direction, it could promote changes for Asia. We'll wait and see. It's just one update from the ECM, but we are seeing signs of quite a significant change there. Okay, if you enjoyed this ECMWF forecast, so please you like, share, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments what you think about this. Are you finding our USA forecast useful? Those of you in America, watching from America, please can you let me know in the comments if you're enjoying these forecasts, if you're finding them useful. So I would love some feedback whether you're finding these forecasts for the United States, useful and informative. Right, so spring evaluation coming up shortly, and then we'll be live streaming at 6 p.m. Your live stream at 10 to 14 there, so I shall see you a little bit later on for that one. For this ECMWF forecast, that's all for now, and thank you so much for watching.